Well, today is May 17. Since you know that God has opened the floodgate of truth, and we happen to have a truckload of it, and we cannot do otherwise but to share it with you people. And I hope this segment will be a real eye-opening, since all the things what's happening in the world today, especially in this communistic Alberta, Canada, where over this weekend, the third pastor was arrested by authorities just because of attending and performing church services. His name is Tim Stevens. Tim Stevens. The other two pastors were James Coast and Arthur Pawlowski. Arthur Pawlowski happened to be a Sabbath-keeping pastor, keeping the true Sabbath on Saturday as it is in the Bible. As this Christian persecution is happening basically worldwide, not only in communistic Alberta, Canada, but also here in the United States, especially in California. It is sad to notice how Christian ministers, religious leaders do nothing about it. Like telling the congregations about what kind of an unjust is unfolding in Canada. Especially, I am very disappointed with our leaders. I'm talking about the Laodicean church, and how they are just like crickets, saying nothing about it. They did not even write a letter of protest. When the Christian world is completely silent and they don't say anything about this unjust, what is taking place, when cops come inside of the church service against their own constitutional rights, the people who were attending the church, and the pastor who was holding the church service. There is a video on YouTube, you can see it. Just look up Rebel News and you will see how cops came into the church and they stopped service. They didn't stop it, I'm sorry. And 6 cops with guns came inside, not pulled guns, but it is still, why you go into the church with guns on your side just to stop a church service? That is just really, really wicked. And then the sheriff had some kind of decency. He waited until the pastor finished and then took over the pulpit and made a public announcement, of course, about his business. How dare he going up there to the pulpit, bringing a strange fire before God? Anyway, so this is so upsetting, this is so ridiculous what is happening. And our ministers, of course, especially talking about Laodicea, are completely silent about this episode, although there is a fellow Sabbath keeper, Sabbath worshipper, all his congregation, himself too. His name is Arthur Pawlowski. Pawlowski, a Polish emigrant from communist Poland, escaped communism, and now communism is coming after him in that great country of Canada, where communism should have no business whatsoever. So it is so sad to see how our world leaders and ministers say nothing. And they should be a light in the world. They should be protesting, and they should be also, from the beginning of this pandemic, they should have been the light to the world, showing the data not matching up, and also just being not scientific whatsoever is being presented by the mainstream media. It is just so ridiculous how all that opinion, everything is departed from science. We have all the health institutions, we have the doctors, and we had even somebody very notable in the White House. And yet these people were completely silent. They were not talking about the real scientific evidences and data, and they would have not presented any of this to the church members. So it is very sad. The prevailing sentiments in our churches by leaders and ministers are in 100% support. Some countries where I have some informations even demanding the vaccination, And this, according to the Nuremberg documents, just remember please what the Nazis did in the concentration camps over the Jews and gypsies. Nobody talks about the gypsies, but poor gypsies were suffering also, but nobody cared. They died by tens of thousands, and the Jewish people died by the millions during World War II in the concentration camps. Either way, it's wrong. Doesn't matter if it's a gypsy or the Jewish person, it was wrong. The experiments, what the Nazis did with the vaccination, and it was not a vaccination. Why do you think that Nuremberg International Agreement had to be made and had to be signed? Why do you think it was necessary? It was necessary because history has already produced something similar what's happening today. They call it a vaccination, and it's not a vaccine, according to the Nuremberg Agreement. And they don't inform the people. They force people to take the vaccination. They coerce some really strong influences, church leaders and everywhere. The worldly people just as much as church people are being attacked for vaccination, misled, misinformed, and nobody declares that this is not, cannot, should not be called a vaccine. None of it. Doesn't matter if it's Pfizer or the China version of it, or the Russian version of it, or the American Johnson & Johnson. Doesn't matter which one. According to the Nuremberg Agreement, international agreement, by the way, it is not only in violation of the international agreement in 1949 in Nuremberg. There are about 7-8 articles which are clearly violated by lockdowns and vaccination, but also violates the Genf agreement around that time, which was also an international agreement, one made in Germany, Nuremberg, the other one made in Switzerland, Genf. We got to educate ourselves, because those who do not seek, they will not find. And therefore, God's people are peculiar people. We need to be peculiar even about vaccination, even about these idiotic orders of social distancing and face mask. Every scientist in the Laodicean congregation, every doctor should know mask does not keep the virus away from the person. Of course, it is a useful thing to do if somebody is sick already. Somebody is sick already, but that person should stay home, should not go out to public. So in that fashion, I can understand, and I completely support wearing the mask. But under the name of propaganda, of forcing it on us and giving us the false narrative about keeping the virus away and keeping us safe, that is absolutely nonsense, absolutely non-scientific. And our educated ministers and leaders should have never agreed to that. But they did. You know why? They did, because that was one condition to the grant they got from the government. The tithe money wasn't enough, what they were collecting from God's people every Sabbath in church. It wasn't enough. They had to go to the government and double insure themselves, sort of like an insurance policy, like they say. They have secured a grant which comes with certain strings attached, and if they comply with those certain strings attached, then a grant is not going to turn into a loan. But if they do not comply with those strings attached by the US government, it will turn into a loan and they will have to pay it back. Of course, they will sell out the denomination and they will do everything for filthy lucre just to secure the grant. It will not turn into a loan. And I'm not very familiar with all the details. What are the strings attached? But it seems to me the face mask and the social distancing and prohibiting singing in churches, not every state, but most states and most countries, and other restrictions in that government style, basically prohibiting us to worship in spirit and in truth. That is definitely the policy they enforce worldwide, the great denomination, and it is very sad. It is very, very disappointing. So, especially when I see that amid this communistic takeover in Alberta, Canada, they don't do any protests. They don't say anything, even ministers. Now, can you imagine what happens when the Sunday law is passed and these would be, they will not be, but if they would be still the remaining ministers for the purified church of God, and they would be the remaining leaders during Sunday law, they would sell us out just the same way as they are selling us out today. They would, in a heartbeat. And this is probably a test before Sunday law. This has nothing to do with Sunday law. Sunday law, I hate to say that, but it's not in the pipeline, that famous saying of you know whom. It is somewhat true, because the COVID and the Sunday law are two completely different issues, and this one is happening, seems to me, more Sunday worshiping Christian ministers have the balls to stand up against this communistic regime and health orders and health regulations which are absolutely unscientific. We don't even see any Laodicean minister worldwide to have balls to stand up against this tyranny, what's happening, and how the church sold us out, and how the church secured a grant from the government, and now they cannot do anything because they have to comply with the strings attached. So that is so upsetting, so ridiculous, but it is at the same time, this situation, what is happening right now, this situation, the best place in the Bible where it describes our present condition today, where we can find some answers. There is absolutely no other place than Psalm 83. If you read Psalm 83, there is a beautiful petition to God and a beautiful prayer to God. Do not keep silence, do not keep thine silence, do not be still, do not hold thine peace. And it goes on and on, describing how basically what's happening today, when the wicked made this incredible advance, a worldwide attack, and they have consulted against God, against God's people, against God's hidden ones. Please, if you find something better in the Bible which describes our condition today, let me know. Let me know, please, because tell me what would be a better fitting, like ministers are arrested, church members, churchgoers, churches are closed, a worldwide conspiracy, a worldwide confederacy against Christians, against God's people, and God is silent, and God is holding still, and God is holding his peace. And right now seems that way, exactly the way Psalm 83 describes it. God is doing nothing. So please, if you can repeat that beautiful prayer and petition to God to change his attitude, like the way he's described in Amos 1. The Lord will roar from Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem. What an incredible opposite attitude and character God has in Amos 1 than what is presented to us in Psalm 83. And what could be a more fitting, more perfect, more describing condition of our present situation, what is happening, all these ministers in Canada, one after Alberta, one after another being arrested, churches are being closed, we are prevented even here in the United States, certain states, to worship in spirit and truth. People come before, people who were created in the image of God, they put on the image of something else when they put on those face masks, and they sit in the pews, they come into church, and they think they worship in spirit and truth, and God can't even recognize the person. It is so ridiculous. It should have never happened. So this is the segment I'm presenting to you for consideration from this very pleasant rest stop in New Mexico. I'm gonna cut this segment. Until next time, farewell, my friend, as I do, or you can try even better. God bless.